After more than 7 years at the helm, Telecom New Zealand CEO Theresa Gattung will be leaving the company at the end of this month. Her replacement has yet to be determined, although Chief Financial Officer Marko Bolkiewski has been sidelined, perhaps even ruling himself out, with the list of possible replacements now narrowed to 2 overseas candidates. For most of her tenure, Gattung has managed to hold back regulatory reform and maintain a near-monopoly position for the company. However, after a change of heart by the government last year, whoever is appointed will be asked to preside over a major reinvention of the company, with a mandated split of Telecom New Zealand's retail and wholesale activities. The Australian's Michael Sainsbury caught up with Theresa Gattung in Sydney.
Actually, when I took the job on, I said that I really saw it as being a 5 to 7 year assignment. And I said at the time, actually, for any CEO, I think it's quite hard for that length of time. You really have to be able to sort of reinvent yourself because you've given it your best shot, usually by that period of time. And it's the right time. It's the right time for me to do something different. It's the right time for the company to have a new CEO. And so it's just basically the right thing to do all around.
When you were given the job, you were only 37. Do you think you were thrown in at the deep end a little bit?
I'd actually been at the company well over 5 years. I've been CEO nearly 8 years. I've been at Telecom nearly 13 years, and I'd been running the New Zealand business for nearly 4 years. So, yes, I was young, but I felt really quite well prepared for it. I'd worked in senior levels in organisations on executive teams reporting to CEOs for a great many years, and I'd run the New Zealand business for nearly 4 years.
Were you aware of the sort of technological changes that were about to overtake your business with mobile and broadband at that stage?
Look, I think a feature of the last dozen years in my time at Telecom has been absolutely the rise of mobile and the rise of broadband. We sent 18 million texts across the Telecom mobile network Christmas Day last year. That was just our network. That's amazing when you think that, when I first joined Telecom, a mobile phone cost $5,000 and you lugged it around in your briefcase, and it was a sort of a yuppie phone. Now it's a remote control for people's lives. So that has been an inexorable, absolute feature of the landscape, and I see really no signs of that slowing down.
So what were the instructions that the board gave you when you took over?
Look, every CEO of a public company has to do what they think is the best, balancing up the needs of the shareholders, the needs of customers, and through, obviously, developing talent inside the organisation. So really no different writing instructions from any other CEO would get taking the helm of a public company.
For most of your stay as CEO, you did a pretty good job of holding back the tide and keeping your near-monopoly position. What happened last year when the government decided to change its mind and impose more regulation? Did you not see it coming, or did they not tell you the truth about what was going on?
Look, that was over a year ago now, and we've really moved on. We've done our best in the last year to approach things differently. We'd already been shifting to be more proactive on wholesale prior to that. I'd already announced an organisation restructure and the creation of an independent wholesale unit. And, there is no best practice of this in the world in telecommunications. You've got Europe, which is increasingly getting more and more regulated, where integrated vertical monopolies of incumbent telcos are really being phased out. But then you've got the US, which with AT&T is busy reintegrating just back into that vertical shape. And here in Australia, you've got a different situation again. So there's no way you can look out at the world and say, well, it's definitely going to go like this, you should do this. You've always just got to assess how it looks at the time and what you think is the best for the situation you're in. And I did that and we did that. And, as a management team, we kicked more goals than we got things wrong.
Telecom New Zealand's proposed a different model to what the government has proposed. They have proposed an internal separation, whereas your proposition is to separate the company into 2 different companies. Is your model a better deal for shareholders than what the government's proposing?
Look, we think that the sort of investment debate around broadband and the costs of rolling out new technology that's actually going on in Australia is a legitimate debate to have in a country, and it would be very good for New Zealand to have that debate, and that operational separation focuses overly on the competition aspects and doesn't really get into, well, how do you roll out fibre to the home for all of New Zealand, for nations like Australia and New Zealand, where you have got an urban-rural divide in terms of population. Now, having said that, we had previously said that we were up for working with an operational separation model, but we've merely pointed out that if you try to do too much too fast, you won't get the rollout of regulated services, and there is a bigger question to be debated about, well, how how do you get the commercial imperatives in place that you get new infrastructure built?
Do you think a one size fits all model with a big fibre network is the best way to go, or do you think there's another model where different technologies might suit different parts of the country?
I think that's a really good question because, as we talked about before, one of the features of the last few years has been the rise of mobile broadband. And if you look at what customers are choosing, we continue to see people going onto our mobile broadband network in unprecedented numbers. And you continue to see the rise of new technologies like WiMAX, and who knows what comes after that. So I think there has to be a place for governments and regulators, and I know that they are cognizant of this. It's one of the difficulties of regulating telecommunications, because you can't assume that the technology that's in place today is going to be the right answer in 5 years' time. So you have to have a model that allows for that plurality of technology. But I think whatever the technology, it's always going to be the case that it's going to be more cost efficient to deploy that in dense urban areas like Auckland or Sydney than it's going to be out in the bush or out in rural New Zealand. And so I think the economics of broadband doesn't really change whatever the technology.
Well, things have gone reasonably well in New Zealand. Australia's been a different matter. You've spent almost $2.5 billion here. You haven't made any profit yet. Do you think that you would have done things differently instead of buying AOPT, which was done before you stepped in?
Australia is really important to our top-end business and corporate market, and we have done extraordinarily well in business and corporate really over the last decade. Australia is a key part of that and always has been, and was one of the key reasons that we came here. It is true that we've struggled, there's no doubt about that, and partly that, not wholly, but partly that has been Telstra's more recent hard-nosed approach in terms of wholesale. But we feel very positive about where we currently are in Australia. The project we've been working on for the last couple of years of completely re-engineering our customer service interface was launched last month very successfully. And of course, also in the last month or so, we've completed the acquisition of PowerTel. So we've basically responded to this situation, re-strategised, re-platformed, and we actually feel very positive about the business and where it's going to go in the next couple of years.